Hello YouTube, I'm Andrew Does Hair. You can find my work on Instagram at Andrew Does Hair. Today we are taking a mannequin head that has had something done to it. There's a lot of holes and short pieces throughout here. I don't know what happened to it, but you'll see gaps and things here in the haircut. And because it's got a weird haircut already, I'm gonna give it a weird haircut. So what I wanna do is kind of a against the rules wrong haircut. I'm gonna bend some rules here and there, just do things, I don't know if I could say outside of the box. I'm not the most creative haircutter in the world, but I want to do a messy, imperfect haircut that looks good. So to begin, I'll take a section straight down the middle. Boop. Now that I've got that section straight down the middle, I'm going to lift the hair straight up and cut it to the shape that I want. So one of the things that makes what might seem like an imperfect haircut actually kind of work really well is that there does have to be some hidden structure in there. So on this very first center strip of hair here, I do want to cut it very structured. I'm going to give it a nice square shape, like a traditional like men's haircut. And off of that, we're going to break rules. But to begin with, we'll just start with a nice, blunt, square, regular haircut. Now I'm going to do this and follow this line all the way to the back. I don't want to round that back in there. Although I'm worried with some of the weird short pieces that the head came with, I might have to in the end. I want to leave a square corner back here, as well as in the front. So the entire haircut is going to come to this line right here. From here to there, and then everything in between. Normally, if I want to do a more put together haircut and I want to put a lot of structure in and then later go back and break it up, normally what I would do is take sections this way. If you've watched my other haircutting videos, you've seen me do that. But what I'm going to do this time instead is I'm going to take another section from front to back next to the original one. And now, what I want to do to create some varied lengths this way is over direct the hair. If I pull this first section straight up and I pull this section from an inch over, if I bring it over to the first section to cut it, then this second section is going to be slightly longer than the first section. And if I take this first section to the second section and I cut it, then this second section is actually going to be shorter than the first section. So if they meet somewhere in the middle, they'll be roughly the same length, but what I want to do is deliberately bring one to the other. And what I'm going to do throughout the head is alternate that pattern. So you can see I've got my new section is not coming straight up, it's coming over to the first section that I cut. And my first section is coming roughly straight up. Now when I hold these hairs up together, I can see my first section that I cut, my second section is going to lean over to it. So when I cut this, if I were to take a cross section this way and lift it up, you would see that the first section is shorter and the second section is longer. Think of this, like if you're going to go in and point cut hair, you would get that shape. And then if I make the next section shorter by, again, over directing, we can get this same shape on the opposite side. I'm going to continue taking this vertical section, I think vertical is the right word, front to back section, from here over to the original section to cut it. Now, I'm going to take that first section and push it out of my way. Forget about it for now. I'm going to take the second section and I'm going to use it as a guide for my third section. Now, I want my third section to be shorter than my first section, or second section, so first, second, third. I want number 2 to be the longer one and number 3 to be the shorter one. So when I pull up number 3, I'm going to take number 2 over to number 3. And now when I pull the hair out of the way and look for number 2 as my guide, it's going to be, oh, there we go, short, long, short, right? Now, when you're working with this short, long, short like that, if the hair is laying this way, you're going to see a step. But if the hair is laying this way or standing up, it's not a step, it's a point. Again, similar to if you're just point cutting. So essentially what I'm doing here is I want to create a jagged look without using a jagged cutting technique. I'm cutting blunt lines, but by over directing hair this way and that way, I'm going to be able to keep that first square shape we put in there, but make it a little bit wavy, a little bit imperfect. Now, I'm going to bring a fourth section up and in to the third section to cut it. It's a lot easier to keep track of which one goes where when I'm not talking about it. If I'm talking, I kind of like forget where I was. Okay, so now that I've done the right side of the head, I'm going to take that middle section again and do the same thing on the left side. If I want this section over here to be longer than the middle, I'll bring it to the middle. And if I want this section here to be longer than the last section, I'll bring this section to the last section. Wait, I don't want this one longer. I want it shorter. See, I lost track again. I'll bring the second section to this section. Bleh. Did I do that right? I don't know. I lost track. But here's the thing. It's not even horrible that I lost track because I want that inconsistency. I don't want this to be a perfect haircut. I want to make imperfection look good. And hopefully by the end of this cut, we can do that. Bring this section to that one. Maybe on this side, I'll change it up. I'll bring the outside section to the inside at the front. And then at the back here, I'll go the other way. I'll bring the inside to the outside. And I'll go, again, the opposite way here. Look for my guide. So if I did this the way that I think I did this, if I were to pull up some cross sections here, again, you will see points, peaks and valleys. It is completely a crooked, wrong haircut, but we'll make it work in the end, hopefully. So now before I move to the side of the haircut, let's, again, just double check what the top is doing here. We got this roughly square-ish shape here that is, in one sense, very structured, but in another sense, very not structured. So we have that hidden structure in there somewhere, but it's also quite texturized with all blunt cuts. When I go to cut the sides here, what I want to do, what I typically used to do, the way that I had cut hair for most of my career was always vertical sections. I would come in here and take this way, and I would shape the haircut that way. The trouble with doing that, and the reason I don't want to do it today, is if I cut a straight line here, I've got a straight, clean line right there. And what I can do, if I cut horizontal sections, meaning parallel to the floor, is horizontal the right word? Oh my gosh, I get so confused. But if I cut with sections parallel to the floor this way instead, what I'm able to do is create a shape here that is like this more, instead of just being like a straight line. You know what I'm saying? And much like I did on the top here by wobbling my guide here and there and not keeping everything consistent, I'm going to do that here. I'm going to bring some sections up a little and some sections down a little and some sections up. And the end result is going to give us this kind of wavy pattern here. So I'm going to make a straight parting down behind the ear to push some of this hair out of my way so I have less to deal with. And then maybe I'll just clip this out of the way for now. Typically, if I'm working on a client, I'll kind of just chop all this at once at the beginning, and that way there's less to deal with on the way up. But for the purposes of showing the haircut in the video here, I'm going to clip it up. Now, when I take each of these sections, the lower I pull it to cut it, the heavier it's going to sit, and the longer it's going to end up. But if I pull it straight out like this, it's going to sit a little more softly when it falls. And if I were to take it and pull it up to cut it, it's going to fall really soft when it sits. And so I'm going to leave the edges of this haircut very soft for now. I'll detail them later. And to do that, I'm just going to bring this way up here. Cut a straight line parallel to the floor. So that's going to fall very softly and give me a nice jagged edge there. Now when I take my next section, I will leave some weight on this one. And I'm taking these sections a little bit on the big fat side because that's going to give me a more dramatic short to long. Kind of like using a chunkier tooth on your thinning scissors or whatever. So if I pull this one down, it's going to sit a little bit more heavy. If I pull it straight down, it's going to sit too heavy. So I'll pull it like, I don't know, 45 degrees down. I'll look for my guide there to see where I cut the last one, and I'll match it up there. Continuing up here, I'm going to take this next section, and I'll pull it maybe, I don't know, straight out from the head, maybe a little bit up. Look for my guide, which is sitting beneath this hair I'm holding. Oops, lost a piece. There's my guide. And that one's going to sit softly because I'm elevating it a little bit here. Now we'll leave a nice strong corner on the haircut by bringing this piece down to the last piece I cut. So this end result that we've got here, if I were to take a little slice out of this and pull it straight out here, you will see that it's got gaps and holes. It's got like short, long, short, long. And what that's going to do when the hair is moved is it's going to move interestingly. It's going to be like texturized, even though I didn't go in and go point, 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 point. So it's kind of like, sometimes I like to go in and do a very structured haircut and then go back and bash it up with the scissors, but sometimes I just like to have the structure be a little bit drunk to begin with, a little bit crooked to begin with, and that's what we're doing here. I'll do on this side the same that I did on the other. So when I was cutting the front here, I had sections that were parallel to the floor. And as I'm working down here, I want to take my sections and just kind of bend them this way. There's an old saying in haircutting that section equals direction. And essentially, the direction you take these sections, you're going to see ever so slightly that influence. Like if you bend the hair this way when you part it out to cut it, when the hair is moved, you're going to see it start to move that way. The section equals the direction. So what I'm going to do here is comb the hair roughly this way, the way I want it to lay. I'm going to take a section that starts in the last area that I cut and then comes down in this shape that I like here. And since this is pretty long and it might get in my way, I'll clip it over here. Now, when I take this hair and pull it out, I'll be able to see at the tip of my fingers here, I can see the hair that I cut when I was cutting the sides here. And that gives me a guide to know how long to cut the rest. As long as whatever I do here connects to that, it's going to flow, it's going to do something cool. I'm going to take all this hair from down here, I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to bring the top of this section basically straight out and kind of just cut it the same length from here to the back. Just follow the shape of the head, really. But because that hair at the bottom is being directed upward, it's going to wind up hanging a little bit long and looking a little bit taily and mullety. And then we can refine it later. Now I'm going to take another section in the same direction. Push the rest of my hair out of the way. Clip it because it's long and I don't want to have it fall in my way while I'm working. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to pull this section out here to see where I had cut this hair at the front. And I'm going to start from there. So remember, working from the bottom to the top here, we have uneven lengths deliberately. And so whatever I pick up over here, I definitely want to connect it to whatever randomness is happening up here, because that's going to give it, again, that little bit of hidden structure, that consistency from front to back. I want, where the things are uneven, I want to control where and how they're uneven. And right here, connecting front to back is not something I want disconnected. So now as I pull out each of these sections, I actually have two guides that I'm working with. At the tip of my fingers, I can see, again, that front section there. But also, I'm picking up the last section that I cut here. And again, just like we did on the top and the sides, I can either direct it this way or this way, and I want to kind of vary it through the haircut to get that wobbliness. But I can see the last section I cut, just like I've been doing through this entire haircut already. Another one. I'm cutting this kind of at a weird angle so I don't block the camera. I hope it's working out. Oh, there's some of those random short hairs that were in here before I got started. Pull this section out. Look for how it connects to the front and bring that through to the back. Look for my last piece that I cut. And follow this shape through the bottom. Now I'm going to keep taking these sections until I cross over the center of the head and I'm cutting hair on the opposite side of the head, way over here. once I'm cutting mostly hair from the left on the right, then I know I'm gonna end up cutting that hair twice. And so as soon as I get past the center, which is right here, then I'm gonna stop and go the other direction. And normally about by this point, when I pull this section over, there's little to nothing to cut anyways. Do the same thing to this other side. I want the front to flow forward and back, so I'll comb it forward and back. I want this back piece to kind of flow this way, and section equals direction, so I'm gonna keep that movement throughout here. And as I pull this section out, I'm going to look for the piece that I cut over here, use it as a guide. Continue this length, following the shape of the head, down to the bottom. Elevate the hair, look for my guide. Yeah, as long as everything connects to something else, it should all work. While it is deliberately crooked and deliberately haphazard and sloppy, it's not completely thoughtless. It's not just random bashing with the scissors, as the pissed off barber would say. Bash it with the thinners. And, you know, the thing is with like some of these deliberately messy haircuts, like some people just can't grasp it. They're like, why would you do an imperfect haircut? The way that I look at it is like, it's like buying a pair of faded jeans. You know, when you wear a nice pair of jeans long enough and they fade on their own, it tells a story. And it's like, sometimes you don't want to go be an action hero in a movie to get tattered, messy, broken hair. Sometimes you just want to have that look. You want to look like it's a zombie apocalypse, even if it isn't actually that yet. And so like, I try to think about that when I'm making a messy haircut, is like, what is the narrative behind this? Like, what kind of messy is it going to be? Like messy like I'm in a band and I cut my own hair with a razor blade in the back of the van? Or messy like it's the zombie apocalypse and a zombie tried to eat me and, you know, got a hold of my hair but missed my brain? I don't know, maybe I think too much about it, but when I see messy hair that's just like, oh, this is messy for the sake of messy, I'm like, yeah, cool, but what story does it tell? What's the motivation behind it? All right, I'm just gonna go through real quick and make sure I didn't miss any long hairs somewhere. So checking my work again. Let's blow dry this and then we can get on to refining it. All right, so now that we've got the hair blow dried, we can see I think it's kind of interesting looking. It looks like it almost knows exactly where it wants to go, but it also kind of doesn't. If we were to pick through this haircut, it would fail the haircutting test. It's a wrong haircut, like I keep saying. But at the same time, there's some kind of structure to it. Now, normally after I blow dry a haircut, when I go through to start refining it, I'm looking for these little imperfections and trying to perfect them, because when the hair is all blown out like this, it's a lot easier to pick it up and see an imperfection than if it has all the natural wave and everything in there. But I have to resist the urge to do it this time. Actually, back here, I just saw a huge discrepancy. This side is like way shorter than this side, but it kind of works. So I'm not going to be correcting those sorts of things. As I'm going through here, what I'm going to be looking for is like this. I like the way it's laying. I like the direction it's going. I like the vibe of it. I like the way it builds up to this shape back here, but it's really heavy down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and just take out some weight. And I'm really going to try not to think about the shape of the haircut at all. I'm kind of just coming in and bashing, just taking holes out. If anything, I'm making the shape even less proper. I'm probably going to do this around about the entire perimeter of the haircut, likely. I'm just going to shred it up until I feel like it's hanging a little bit more beautifully. Now, the fun thing about a haircut like this is like, there's really no right or wrong. All there is do you think it looks good? And do you not think it looks good? And then more importantly, does your client think it looks good? I have clients who will not sit in anyone else's chair because every other barber they've been to was afraid to leave something jagged or crooked. And they're like, yo, I like the jagged and crooked. And I get that, I respect that. It's kind of my specialty actually. Like a huge, huge majority of my clientele specifically comes in for the jagged, crooked hair. Force of habit, I went to pull the ear out of the way to make sure I didn't cut it. You don't have a real ear. I just stabbed the neck there. I wouldn't do that on a human, I hope. Haven't yet. Where's wood? Whatever. If you don't know how to do this, basically you need a very sharp scissor. You open it up, you slide it into the hair, and then you slowly close it as you pull it out of the hair. It doesn't have to be fast, but I find if I flick it, I get a little bit more of a organic look to the shape, to where if I go really slow, it looks like I hand carved it. And to me, I feel like it looks like tool marks if I go too slow. But when I kind of flick it, it looks a little more, I don't want to say natural, because like what's naturally going to happen to your hair to make it look like that? I don't know, a bear attack? All right, let's soften up a little bit of weight throughout here. So we should see, maybe we'll see, if I move the hair this way, you can actually see those length discrepancies this way. You can see them kind of moving and cascading in there. And I like that, I want that, I asked for that. But maybe I will soften it up a little bit. So I'm just going to come in here and do some big, fat, loose point cutting here. Deep point cutting. Chop, chop, chop. On certain hair textures, you can get away with really deep point cutting like that. On other hair textures, you want to avoid it. Basically, if somebody's hair wants to stick straight out when it's short, you don't want to point cut too deep. Another thing I'm keeping in mind as I'm going through and knocking holes in this haircut is the direction of my blade. I will say again, section equals direction. Wait, that doesn't go here. The angle of all these little chops I'm putting in here will influence the way that the hair wants to lay. If I cut this way, the hair will want to bend that way. If I cut this way, the hair will want to bend this way. So I'm kind of keeping that in mind as I work through here and start chopping things out. Same thing with this like slide cutting, is if I slide cut this way, the hair wants to lay that way. But if I slide cut this way, the hair wants to lay that way. In fact, what I'm going to do back here to just create some nice chaos is I'm first going to slide cut this direction right through everything. Just knock some holes in there. There was already some holes in there when I started this haircut. Remember, I pointed that out in the beginning. And now I'm going to do it the other way. That's just going to create a crap load of movement back here, a little bit of volume. Anywhere I see weight, I'm going to go in and put a hole in the haircut. This side actually looks pretty good. I kind of don't have to do anything. I think I cut this side better than the other side. I tend to do that on a lot of haircuts. All right, working through the top here. What else do I know how to do? Maybe that number. I would get my hair cut like this, not gonna lie. Oh. I don't even think I need to texturize the top. I think those blunt cuts worked. It's moving really well. All right, I'm pretty sure I'm done with this. Maybe we'll put some product in there and see what it looks. Go get some beauty shots. Still no product in here yet. I'm just kind of playing with the hair, making sure that there's nothing else I can go back and refine. But I'm really happy with it so far. Even without product, it's looking pretty good. On that note, since the blow dry did most of the work as far as shaping the hair, I don't need a lot of product to finish it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start with EDH dry everywhere that I want volume. And the way I'm going to put this in is just that tiny, tiny little scrape here. Rub it super thin on my hands. And I want to kind of like reach through the hair and noogie it onto the scalp. Everywhere I want the hair to kind of pop up. And then once most of the product is off my hands and kind of on the scalp, then I'll pull some through a couple of the ends where it's just looking a little bit too frizzy. The way I like to think of these products, dry and wet, is If I want hair bigger, I go for dry. If I want hair smaller, I go for wet. So just to kind of help sculpt the shape of this, I'm gonna go, and to kind of lean into the sort of dirty, grungy look, a little bit more dry here, I'm gonna use wet around the perimeter of the haircut. And that's something that I like to do. This is gonna sound so gross to some people, but other people are gonna go, yeah, I get it. I find that by putting a little bit of a shiny pomade into a hairstyle like this, it can actually, it sort of emulates like sweat. Like, that's like a lived-in haircut. So I'm gonna take a little bit of ADH wet here. Just a tiny, tiny little scrape. And I'm gonna work it through some of these danglies to make the hair look a little bit lived in, I guess we'll say. So there it is. That's our deliberately imperfect haircut. I get a lot of requests for these kinds of looks, these really just bashed up, shattered, jagged, broken haircuts. And this is just one way that I might approach it. Thanks for watching. If you got anything out of this, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know if you have any questions about anything. It's about time I got back to doing haircut videos. It's been a long time. I've been talking a lot about cameras because that's like much easier content for me to do. But now that I'm set up in the salon here to record these, I'm hoping to start doing a lot more of these kinds of videos.